know what time it is? It's time to get in the game with your host, Cynthia J.
Good evening, guys, and welcome to Get in the Game. I am your host, Tara J, of your favorite sports show, Get in the Game, and you are joining us live right here in Miami, in the home of two people that mean the world to me, Pastor Steve and Arlene DeBardelaben here in Miami. They've been here for years, serving here right on the campus of University of Miami. Welcome to the show. Thank you all for inviting us into your home. Get in the Game is excited to be here. You guys are officially our first interview on the road. This is going to go down in history. Don't worry. We'll win an award for this later, and we will give you guys credit for this. But some of you guys may be wondering why I'm interviewing this couple, and I'm glad you asked. So in honor of Mother's Day and Father's Day, I thought it would be grand to bring on the couple that has meant so much to me and my family, and to honor you guys as mothers and fathers of somewhat of an entity. You've been a mother and father to college kids on campus, to married couples in ministry, and so we are just honored to be here with you guys today, and once again we thank you for inviting us into our home. So let's start from the beginning. You guys do have a rich history in sports. Pastor Steve, you started your career playing football, correct?
I played football at Georgia Tech.
Okay.
As a linebacker.
Okay.
And reported 6 feet, 167 pounds.
Uh-huh.
And I grew to 218.
Okay.
I was there. I was a small linebacker.
Okay.
Played 3 times against Miami. And it was our first, worst, and our best against Miami. But had great memories and developed a friendship with the first African-American player at Miami, Ray Bellamy, and we got to know each other on the field.
Wow, awesome. So while you were at Georgia Tech and Ray was at University of Miami, you guys grew a friendship there.
Yeah, we played against each other.
Okay.
And actually I covered him on the field. I was the short underneath coverage, and the safety behind me. And,
was Ray?
Yeah, no, Ray was the athlete we were trying to contain. He had such speed and talent, and was a great player.
Awesome. And now where are you from originally?
Atlanta.
You're from Atlanta. Okay, so you stayed right there home in Georgia Tech. Now, did you go on to play professional, or did your career end in college?
Now, I got one interview letter from a professional team, and I said I'd keep it as a souvenir.
Okay, but it didn't transpire into anything. But you ended up in the industry either ways. Now, before we came on camera, we were talking about you guys just celebrated your 50th year anniversary. Congratulations, we honor that. It takes a lot to be married for 50 years, right?
It does, especially if you're thinking about how fast we did it.
Yes.
We had one date in June, dated July, got engaged in August, got married in November.
On an off week, and we played Miami the next week.
Because you were still in
I
college.
was still in college.
Now, were you at Georgia Tech as well?
No.
Okay.
There were only a very few handful, School of Engineering.
She was a fashion gal.
Ooh.
No, but when we dated in that time, and it happened so quickly, he proposed. I didn't expect the proposal. And so I said yes, and then the next morning my mother said, I told her, and she said, well, what's his last name? I don't know. And so literally we had to wait 2 days until he came back by the house, and then we had to spell it out. But I was marrying Mr. Steve.
Wow. So what made you propose so quickly? You had to know something.
Well, there's a longer history, but I'll go brief. I had a steady relationship early in my high school experience, and then a long dry spell, and then I dated a gal for about 6 months that was deeply spiritual, and I had come to faith during that time too, and it really grounded my faith in God's Word, and had great confidence in Him and His will and plan and purpose for my life, and so that relationship was great, but it ended. And I was a college student. I was a student athlete, a lot going on, but I was ready to stop the dating game. And I prayed literally, Lord, send me a wife and send her quick. And that was when Arlene took a visit to South Africa or South America.
South America. But that's a longer story.
So where did you guys actually meet?
In Atlanta.
In Atlanta.
At her house. Because I met her mother at this church, and she invited me and several friends over to their house.
Really?
It's such a longer story, so
Okay, so you have, Miss Arlene, you have to tell me, when he walked in, so I'm assuming you
I got
walk in.
engaged the night that he came to my house. I got engaged that night to somebody else. And I walked back into the house and he was there. We didn't really speak to each other, but I thought, he seems like a really sharp guy. But he had a big, big neck and a Letterman shirt and a crew cut. And it wasn't in style to have that short hair. And so I thought, he's too...
I was in style today.
Oh, yeah.
Back then.
But back then you weren't.
And so I basically, I was engaged for 1 month. And realized that I wouldn't have the kind of marriage that my parents had. And I really admired their marriage. And so I thought, you know what? We're not sharing the values, and it was a spiritual value that was missing. And so I gave God permission, literally, I said, I can't break up, but I can give you permission to change my mind. You change my thinking. And suddenly my thinking changed, and I was smart enough to say, send me to South America quick, so that I can get out of this and not change a good decision. And so while I was down there, I was doing that, and again, it's a longer story. He started praying for a wife and send her quick. That prayer got answered because they changed the visa law, and I had to come home earlier than I expected. And when I came home, saw him, and that began that quick dating period that I told you
One
about.
of those nights where everybody in the room is looking across the room at the pretty eyes, and the guys looking at girls looking at guys, and everybody's sizing everybody up.
You sized her up. Now, we hear a lot about love at first sight, and you guys have been in ministry. You've counseled, hundreds of thousands of couples. You've done hundreds of weddings. When you look back on that 50 years, was it love at first sight?
I read a quote the other day that said, if you believe in love at first sight, you'll be looking every day.
Wow.
And so no, we got married and we weren't looking anymore. But I think there were some ingredients that what I came off of, I knew what I wanted from that the spiritual value was missing. And I think he had already assessed what he wanted. So I think, yes, but it was those, we didn't have a dinner date, et cetera. He was working at the time as a youth director. It was observing each other and how we treated other people. And so I would go to help. I liked what I saw, the way he was treating other people, and he vice versa. And so when we came together, there was one other thing I loved, is that he loved to sing in the car. And my dad sang all the time in the car. And he required all of our 6 siblings to sing in the car. And so I didn't think I'd ever find somebody. So that sealed the deal when I did that.
And did you have any idea that your singing in the car sealed the deal for her?
I knew it was a part of it.
Yes.
Because of her dad and his interest in things. And cars-wise, I had a TR3, a little sports car, ragtop, convertible.
That helps.
She had a convertible Volkswagen, I guess, but it was a sporty Volkswagen convertible. And so we ended up marrying with 2 cars. I guess we sold the 1 car before we got married.
Yeah.
But anyhow, we liked the same things. We enjoyed this particular church. Was very powerful. The pastor was an excellent teacher of God's Word, and he got you involved in having people relate. And so, yeah.
Jumped in it quick. Now let's go off topic really quickly, because I think this will help some people that are watching. Nowadays you see people dating years and years. You see engagements 2-3 years. You see people dating 7-8 years. Why is it, what is so different about this generation that people, they don't see an action and have ingredients and to make it work quickly and just move on?
Yeah,
ahead.
I'm thinking it's commitment. I think it's really, really hard. I think we've always, is there love at first sight? It's that I'm going to try every type. And I don't think, I think it's more about becoming the person that you would attract. Becoming the right person so you attract the right man. So I think it's about doing work in that way, and then it's about being ready to make commitment. And it's work. It's hard work. Anyway you look at it, weeds are going to grow. And daily maintaining your garden is important. And then, so I think it's really realized it's not a fantasy. It's not a forever after, kind of thing. I can get really mad at this guy.
There you go there. For me, I discovered this church, and there was amazing things, relationships that were established at that church that still carry on to today. And the pastor of that church was really effective in his taking scripture and making it relevant to our lives. And so, there's a whole lot of other stories, but I met her in that context. The Lord working in my life and kind of paving the road for the future. I was from Atlanta, and then when I came to faith, it was my freshman year, I'd already been a churchgoer, but I did not know how to have Christ in my life forever. And so Tuesday night in October, the Lord and I sealed the deal, and I said, I'm available to you. And so I got to speak in a lot of different churches and everything. But it was this particular church became my home church at the time.
Okay.
And Sunday nights, and this pastor was very dynamic. And he could quote a subject from Genesis to Revelation. He could quote every Bible verse about it. And so that really inspired me. And then when I met her family and met her dad, I think at a men's gathering at that church. And I can't remember exactly how we got to your house from there.
Conniving mother.
Well, there you go. Thank you, Mom. So talk about, because you were 19 when you guys got married, and you were 21.
Right.
And so you were playing football, in ministry, and now a newlywed. So you kind of entered that world with him. How did that work?
I think I look forward to, our hearts were in the same place. I love relationships, love to work with people. I think one of the first lessons when you were talking about the pastor and being meaningful in our life, I can remember one time that he had said some things that really helped me one night. He had said, think healthy, don't let your imagination run away with you. In the sermon, and he used a lot of scripture to help, keeping your thoughts on the positive things. Steve would come late home sometimes because he was into relationships. He'd run into somebody and it'd be 11:30, and I had him in a car crash, and he's dead, and woe is me. I'm stranded. And so when he'd come home, I attacked and said, "Why didn't you call me? It would have been a payphone then. And why didn't you let me know?" And he would have such good news to share with me about something that happened. But how can you share good news when I'm on the attack? And it just wasn't working. So I think that was the first really valuable lesson I learned, is that I began to think about that, and I said, in order to think healthy, I've got to think the worst out first. Okay, what if the worst happened? Who do I want to be, and what I want to be about when that happens? Should he die in an accident? Should something happen? Do I want to be this crazy woman that's totally, lost it? Or do I have a trust that God's got this, even if that should happen? So I actually went through it in a virtual reality kind of way. I'm really crying and knowing, well, first I would call my family, and I knew exactly what I would do. So it was sort of a hurricane preparedness kind of thing. This is the way I would want to respond. And then I thought, okay, but that's not going to happen. That's such a small percentage of that happening. And so the next thing I thought, okay, so now I can go think healthy. Don't let your imagination run away with you in the negative. That's taken care of. But what could I do proactively? And I said, think healthy and let your imagination run away with you in the positive. And so then I began to say, Lord, I don't know what's delay in the sky, what's he doing, but thank you that something neat is happening. Be there with him right now. And whoever is the recipient, what's ever going on, may it be good. So when he came home, I wasn't attacking. I was just like, wow, it's late. We would deal with it, but tell me about it. And we began to build such a trust out of that. We could trust each other. And we also practice keeping in touch, and when we do, it got easier with cell phones. We let each other know where we are, what's going on. Just
That's
because
awesome.
it's good to be in touch.
Yes. And what did you learn in those years of being married early, still having a commitment to playing football and producing as an athlete? So that's a whole nother pressure on its own. And then also being in ministry and pouring into and serving others.
You described it.
Okay.
That was what I did.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a part of who I was. As a student athlete who can come to faith.
Mm-hmm.
And there was before I met Arlene, there was a Sunday night event where several of the Georgia Tech football players not only attended but had leadership roles. The song leader, and the MC, and the piano player. They're all Georgia Tech football players. And mine was my story.
Okay.
That was what I brought through. And so I don't know where we're going with this thought.
So now here's another thought, because you eventually became a pastor and became ordained. How was that experience for you? When did that happen?
Well, we married, and then we went together. We came on staff with Campus Crusade for Christ, now
Okay.
as crew.
Okay.
And we came on staff, and
Well, what I love about what our life has been about is that we do it together. And so when we came on staff with crew, at the time it's no longer a requirement, but at the time you both came on staff. You were both doing it. And so I was just as much a part of that. And I think for any marriage, what you do is you find that common ground. And spirituality has everything to do, because I can get mad at Steve, but I give God permission to change me. I don't give Steve permission to change me, but I give God permission to change me. And so working together, going towards that same goal, has really helped us to chart the waters. And when things happen to us, we have a willing spirit to let God change us. And so I think you were talking a little bit about the marriage thing. I think of one other time that I was late. I was late a lot. But I had 4 kids. It's a little bit further on. And I began to realize that, let me get back. So we were on our way to a banquet, and it was a Valentine's banquet, and it was for deacons at our church. And so here we are going to the spiritual thing, and when we are on the way, he is really hammering me about being late. And so by the time I'm getting there, my eye makeup is smearing, I'm sobbing and crying, he's banging on the steering wheel about this. And we made a resolve that night that began to be a very important thing in our marriage. And that is, we were going to tell each other effectively one time. So shouldn't do it right on the knee-jerk reaction. Should think it through. Should, get a bigger perspective of it. And present our perspective one time clearly. And then we're going to back off and allow the Holy Spirit to work in each other. And we would pray for each other, and we would pray for ourselves to have better understanding of the situation. What that did is it stopped all the nagging happening. And by doing that, I think it really, really did help our marriage to say, okay, I need to say this clearly. Let me give it some thought. God, give me perspective to see it more holistically. And then, but still, I can lose it.
But for me, it boiled down to the simplicity of if Christ is the Lord of my life and Christ is the Lord of her life, he's not going to war against himself. And so, okay, Lord, let me find you in this conversation. what you're saying and what you want us, how you want us to proceed. And usually a Bible verse would come to mind that would remind me of husbands, love your wives and lay down your life for them. Okay. Then wives.
Guard your tongue.
Yeah, that's good. Now, what I love about the ministry you're in is when you look at society, you guys have merged with the ministry you're in. Probably two of the biggest things that most people think can't go together, faith and sports. But you've been in that ministry for over 40 years. And it led you here to Miami. And so talk about your decision, Pastor Steve, to, after playing against the team for so long, come here to this campus and do Athletes in Action here on the campus of University of Miami.
Well, we made a request. We were in Grand Rapids, Michigan, and working with high school students.
Okay.
And there's some interesting connections with that, and even to a future Michigan Day game when Miami is playing at Michigan, and the high school coach walks out of the Michigan locker room, and I walk out of the Miami locker room, and we say Grand Rapids. And
wow,
we had positive working conversation about faith.
We lived our first assignment with crew was with Grand Rapids, Michigan.
High school students.
They sent you there.
They sent us there, and we had no idea where it was because President Ford hadn't happened yet.
Okay, so you're getting ready to go from Atlanta, Georgia to Grand Rapids, Michigan. Okay, now that's a change.
It was. I had a young baby when we got there. I had twins right after that.
Whew.
And I was just sequestered to my house and our house, and so I would subconsciously.
But again, this house is walking distance to our job, the athletic field,
right,
etc. That house across the street was the football field, the baseball field, practice field, and a playground for our kids. So as the Lord had provided in both places the geography necessary.
It was a wonderful house, but the weather was not wonderful.
So how long did you all stay in Michigan?
We were there 4 years, but what I was going to tell you is I watched the weather report on it.
So we left Atlanta one time and it was like 75 degrees in April, and we get to the Michigan state line and it starts snowing. It snowed 10 inches before we got to Grand Rapids, which was really an hour drive, but it just blitzed snow. 10
inches in 1 hour, and that's what they're experiencing up there right now, all into May, that they're getting that snow. But I kept telling Steve every day he'd come home, I said, do you know what the weather was in Miami today? And he'd come home, I said, the weather in Miami today was. And I kept saying Miami. So I call it my subconscious prayer of wanting to go to Miami.
Wow.
And so suddenly they transferred us at request. We asked to be transferred south, closer to Atlanta. We are now 50 miles closer to Atlanta than we were in Grand Rapids.
Wow. Now, how did the opportunity open up for you to come do ministry here at University of Miami after leaving Michigan?
We requested a transition from high school students to college students.
Okay.
And somewhere in the southeast, and we said closer to Atlanta if possible. Atlanta or closer to Atlanta. And Miami is 50 miles closer, as you said.
Right. So Miami's the choice. Now, what made you want to go from ministering with high school students to college? That's a big jump.
Well, it wasn't such a big jump for me. Maybe more for her with 3 kids, or 4, because Ross was born 2 weeks before we moved to Miami.
Wow.
On the way, he was from Michigan. We stopped in Atlanta to have a baby and come to Miami.
Wow.
So,
that's a story. So what was? How did you adjust to that?
It's funny. I was a mom for a while, and it was a different thing. I think life is very seasonal, so I began to find ways to be in the season and enjoy the season. So that was good. But I would have students come over and do that, but I had no involvement on the campus. It's just that I would invite them in the home. And so those seasons went on. Then when they got into school, I was able to get more involved. And then I began to gain in skill by just, being exposed to it. And relationships is what it's about. God made us for a relationship with himself. And so his relationship is what he wants us to experience. And I find no greater joy than the work I do. I did want to be an interior designer, but I decided I like this far better. I mean,
And you still do a little bit of that. We're not going to take you guys around their home because it's, we're going to keep it private, but if you guys would see what she set up in here, it's beautiful. What was your first assignment when you got here to campus? Do you remember?
It was college students.
Okay.
We worked with the main campus as well as the athletes.
Okay.
Because of being an athlete, because of the history with playing in Miami 3 times, and there are a lot of relationships. And Ray Belvey, who I played against, was the director of programming for the student union when we moved here.
Okay.
And he opened all kind of doors for us.
Wow.
To connect with the student body at the University of Miami.
So what did that conversation sound like? Did someone approach you and say, Pastor Steve, we would love for you to be the chaplain for the football team, or did that come with the position when you all moved here?
It sort of came with position, but it came more from our background.
Okay.
We have what's called a campus director.
Okay.
And, yeah. I guess, again, initially, there was a guy named Al Marquez that had a big impact on my life when I was a college student.
Okay.
And spring break projects and things like that. Well, he was at Miami.
Wow.
And for a very short time, just a very short time, we worked together with him, and then he kind of entrusted it to us.
but I think the thing was that when we arrived here, because of his sports background, it was natural to hang around the athletes.
Gotcha.
And so eventually, the first coach that you began to work with, well, the first coach here was Saban, opened the door a tiny bit. And then the next time, you had Snellenberger.
Okay.
And the door opened a little bit more, and he became involved.
Well, and Coach Snellenberger was a man of faith from the Catholic tradition.
Okay.
And but he was also very careful about who worked with his team. And I was continually trying to connect with him, and it just seemed like it wasn't happening. The door would always be closed. The secretary's behind the door. If I got by the door,
Yeah.
the secretary, and then his door was closed. Well, there was one morning I come into the athletic center, and the secretary's not there. The front door's open. The secretary's not there. His door's wide open. He's sitting at his desk. And
You walked right in?
I walked in and said, Coach, can I have a few minutes with you? Sure,
Wow.
come on in. And,
Give us insight on that conversation.
well, we just talked about, the need of spirituality on the team. And he was a good Catholic man and knew the value of his faith. And but the timing was the big deal, and he really opened the door. And then along with, there was no chaplaincy, and there was not a priest working with the team, but along with me came a priest from St. Augustine Church over there. And we worked together for a number of years. And we would have a pregame mass and a pregame chapel. And then I suggested to the priest one time, I said, we got chapel over here and mass over here. It seems like we're in competition. Why don't we do the first part together, and then you can do the things that are unique to mass, and I'll do the things that are unique to the Protestant faith. And we agreed to that, and the coaches agreed to that. So the team came together, and we both had opportunity to speak something to the team of our faith and relationships and biblical scriptures that were relevant. And so that was the beginning. There's a lot of history after that.
Yeah. I'm wondering at what moment, obviously you had been at that point working in ministry for years, starting in Georgia, then on to Michigan, but at what moment did you have one of those eye-opening moments where you knew we are in the place we're supposed to be? Whether was it interacting with one of the athletes, was it an interaction with one of the coaches? For each of you, what was that moment where you knew, man, God has us right on the campus, changing the lives of the athletes that we're supposed to be touching?
I think it was every place we went. And the first one was Michigan. We live across the street in the backyard of the high school where we worked. We moved to Miami, and it was the school where the kids were. We were right, literally walking distance to that. And then obviously this place, Hurricane Andrew bought us this house.
Wow.
And so here we are across the street from the campus.
Mhm.
The Lord provided, and it's like, okay, open your eyes. This is
You're right here.
Look what I've set before you.
Mm.
And
The open door closed door.
yeah, He opens doors that no man can shut. He shuts doors that no man can open. And see, I've set before you an open door. Comes from the book of Revelation. But that was central in our faith journey.
Mm-hmm.
Is okay. And again, going into the athletic department, and the door is open.
Literally,
Coach,
yes,
And
literally.
so walk in, and then that we have worked with not just football, but
Mhm.
with other sports as well, baseball, basketball, track athletes.
I think that through all of this, trust is such a huge factor in this. And some people say you have to go plant it, grab hold of it, and take hold of it. And I think sometimes you can grab hold of the wrong thing. I have found that really the Lord does open doors. And you say, wow, there's no way I could be there by ambition. He opened the door, and I'm there. And then show me a person skilled in their work, and they'll stand before kings. And so we have suddenly stood before coaches in different situations in franchises because we work with Miami Heat a little bit too. But all of those were doors that came open that was a God thing. It was not us with our ambition trying to make that door open. Mm-hmm. God opened the door, but with that comes responsibility. And that responsibility is to, okay, now I need to be really skilled, and I'm going to be responsible for this role that I'm taking. And there's a lot of trust factor in there, and there's a lot of confidentiality, and you're not in for it as a fan of any of these college athletes or in the pro level. You're in there because you are helping them get in touch with a spiritual life, a relationship with God.
Yes.
And you want to help them grow. And they'll all be at different stages of their life. And a lot of times, it's like parenting children. It's hard to corral them.
And things happen at the right time in life. I'm working with the Miami Heat, and the place they give me a seat is up in the end of the arena at the time. And I'm sitting with the alternate Heat dancers, so I'm sitting in the middle of all these beautiful women. And I said, my wife needs to be here.
Yes.
And what happened eventually was I said, you gals, you need to meet my wife. And we were invited to an off-site event. I think we invited them to our house, I guess.
Well, basically, you said, would you like to have my wife do what I do with the players? And so do it with you as the dancers. And they said, we'd love that. And so I just went in. But I go into the locker room with the gals, and we provide chapel service for them.
Awesome. Now, when you've been working at the University of Miami for how long now?
44 years.
44 years. So you've gone through, you're I would say the longest standing coach, so to speak, that's been here.
Well, it has, organizationally, there's been shifts.
Right.
But we have continued whatever we were doing as a primary thing. Like we worked with the business community, it's called executive ministries, and worked with the guys who ran the Orange Bowl, the Orange Bowl committee, and the chairperson of the Orange Bowl committee. We were meeting at his place in Grove Isle, which is an island. And Henry Kissinger was sitting at the next table, and the politician, and he was very powerful. And he's sitting at the next table, and we one day felt led to initiate with him and start a conversation and tell him about our work and invite him to join us if he'd ever have the time or opportunity. And he said, "You're very kind." And he says, what you're doing is more important than what I do.
Wow.
And he said, but I'm not here very much. But again, and there was an occasion or two after that where we did have contact. But it was in that context that the Lord opened the door. The one guy lived there, and the rest of us came across the bridge and into the island.
Now, one thing I want to ask you, Pastor Steve, is
that was while we were still working with college and
At the-
professional athletes.
at the same time. And when you look at the rich history that's here at University of Miami, specifically football, and there's been, you know, a lot of history with the baseball team as well, track program, Amy Dean, we know that she sent tons of athletes to the Olympics. Football team produced a gazillion championships and NFL athletes. And you've been here, you guys have been here through all of that. Is there any pressure that comes with doing ministry on the campus of a university that has such rich athletic history?
Not really.
Mm-hmm.
I'd say we're thankful for the privilege, and we have worked in partnership with others intentionally.
Mm-hmm.
And there comes some times when there's a shift where, you know, maybe we're not in the centerpiece of where we were at one time.
Mm-hmm.
And so someone else steps into that role because of previous relationships or whatever. And that's where we say, okay, Lord, you want to open doors that no man can shut. You shut doors that no man can open. And I guess this one is a closed door. And then you're dealing with the closed door, and the Florida Panthers call and say, you know, a guy with the Florida Panthers, I think he was the, you know, player personnel guy,
Mm-hmm.
and he says, we need a chaplain. Can you do it?
Wow.
And he became very close friends with John Beesbrook, who was a great player and was an Olympian, and we actually got to go to, I did, Nagano, Japan, and see him as an Olympian, U.S. Olympian, played the goaltender of the hockey team.
Wow.
And had interaction with, we were kind of the protection, he and one of my sons was
Mm-hmm.
kind of the protection of his wife while he's
While it was going on. Now, Miss Arlene, you early on in the interview, you talked about just your love of building relationships. And so being here for 40 plus years, I mean, every 4 to 5 years, a new group of students come in. Is it ever difficult once you build those relationships with those particular student athletes to kind of release them as they go on and graduate from here?
I think it's always a sweet thing when I hear back from them and in different ways. But there are some that just you get so close they almost become a handful. They become like a son or a daughter to us. There's some that go on and reproduce. And I think that's the main thing, is that you want to let them go and reproduce. The building relationships, we try to build skill levels in how you build a relationship. We have quite a few things. I love, one of the things I love is a thing that's in conversation is your history, your highlights, your heroes, your heartaches, and your hope. And that is the greatest tool that I have found. And in building, I use this, and Steve uses this to help them build for to do interviews, to do anything. The more that they can bring into a conversation, but you start out with, you could glean some history from somebody on a plane flight, anywhere. You find out who their heroes of their life are. You find out the highlights. When they get to the highlights, you want them to brag. I think of Dean, the students here one time was asked to speak to the football team, and he was having a struggle with, well, what do I share? And so effectively he used that outline: history, highlights, heroes, heartaches, and hopes. And he had the guys just dying and rolling and laughing when he talked about, you know what, guys, my highlight, I can moonwalk. And it was way past time to moonwalk. But here this older dean gave moonwalk for the guys, brought the crowd down, the football team down. But then he talked about his heartache, and his heartache was his brother had committed suicide.
Wow.
And suddenly when you get into that, and you can do it fast, but longer with people you know longer. But if you can do a short-term one, if for someone you probably won't see, but in doing that and finding out what their heartache is, suddenly you have now melded I mean, your hearts are bonded because you're sharing heart to heart and vulnerability. And then the last one is you bring it back up to hope. You say, what gives you hope? What is that? And so I get to know somebody. So when you say relationship, I love relationships, and I love learning the skills that help with an authenticity to get into the relationship, so that you're not just having a cocktail party with surface talk, but you're going deeper.
And I'm glad you said that, because one of the heartaches that I know personally that you all endured and championed in your marriage was when you were diagnosed with cancer. And even all the while, you know, Pastor Steve, with everything that was going on here on campus, and you all were still in ministry, just talk about just being able to get through that time in your marriage and while you were still in the middle of doing ministry.
There's a saying, beginning with the end in mind. And so we dreamed of our life continuing like this. But there was the process, you know, which every day was a new day. And we didn't know, you know, if we would be together here on this planet for much longer. But thank God we have been. And
Well, I'll just let you know that I was sitting just a little bit over from where you're sitting right now, talking to some college girls one night. And I did that same illustration about think healthy, don't let your imagination run away with you. And I said, you know, I know that no matter what, God is scripting in each story for each one of us. And He's scripting my story. And my story could include highs and lows, because to read anybody's story, you want a high, you want a low, you want some excitement. And so I said, so I accept those lows because they're making a great story. And I said, I could find out tomorrow that I have cancer, and I'm going to give God thanks. And I just immediately had a knowing, you have cancer. And I thought, okay. And so then I can remember that, okay. And I did begin to say, try to get a doctor's appointment. Too long of a story to tell that one. But I ended up in an emergency situation in Colorado and had to, stage 3 cancer, and they had to do surgery, had a bag, had all the things you would never think of doing. But through the experience, God was faithful, just like I anticipated that He would be. And I said, I believe when the time comes, He's going to meet me there. And it was hard times, and it was tough, and what we went through. But out of it, I think we grew closer together in that experience. I had confidence, if I live, we'll praise the Lord, and if I die, we'll praise the Lord. Either way, it's a good thing. It's a better thing, actually, to get going, but He wouldn't appreciate that, and my kids wouldn't appreciate that. But I think when I had that peace, I think that's part of the healing, is that God, whatever way you take it, you know, I know that you're scripting a great story, and you have, you know, I'm in it. I'm in it.
And I'm so thankful, because I recall during that time, you know, coming over, because I think you and I had a conversation, and you were like, I want to stay active during that time. Can you come over and help out? And I remember walking in, and I thought to myself, this Arlene does not look, I mean, you have the assumption of how someone's going to look that is battling stage 3 colon cancer, and you look nothing like that person. You were moving around, and you were talking about ministry, and I think that night maybe a group of kids were coming over, and I'm thinking, her outlook on this is incredible. And when Pastor Steve, when you hear her talk about, you know, I'm going to praise God if I live, or we're going to praise God if I don't make it, during that time, what was going through your mind?
To be faithful where I was with God, knowing that He's with me and with her and with me and with the doctors. Pray for those doctors to have wisdom and skill, and pray for her and us together as we have to make decisions, wisdom and anticipating the Lord to provide. But again, just thankfulness that you know, going through something with someone, the big temptation would be the big why question.
Mm.
But, okay, I don't know why, and I still don't know why, other than, you know, the world can see the difference. Her and someone else going through the same things.
Right.
The world sees the difference, and so, okay, Lord, I'm in, and let's get through this thing.
Yeah.
And,
Do you think your outlook of great anticipation changed the outcome of
I think
being
it's-
able to beat cancer?
Yeah, I have to say that in this, you have to, since God created everything, that I realized that the choice we had to make is individual. So other people may have made a different choice, but for me it came down to the fact that I thought, I don't, after researching, we decided not to go with chemo and instead to change our eating. So the reason you saw me so healthy right at that time is that I decided to have absolutely no added sugar in my foods. And so I don't read the grams, I read the ingredients. And if it has more than 5 ingredients of things I don't even understand what that word means, then I need to just say, no, I don't need that. So basically for the first 4 months I had no, I didn't even eat fruit because cancer loves sugar. And so I didn't want to fuel it in any way. And so I basically, and then after that, I still, to this day, I do not eat any sugar, any added sugar and things. I do use honey and use maple syrup. Now, all that to say.
And I was going along with her and
Awesome.
saying, she's not eating, I'm not eating. I grew up where you would take half-gallon ice cream, cut it in 3 spots, and eat that every 9 o'clock at night.
Wow!
You know,
3 spots!
You know, just, you know, me and my brothers.
I love that! Wow!
But I was going to say.
So we pushed that away.
Mhm.
No, thank you. And what is the healthy thing we can do here?
So so I decided that if I let my own immune system be built up by God's food, that would make the difference. So that's what I went for. And then another thing that convinced me was that I can remember as a child, a gentleman that my parents knew had cancer, and he had been given up on. And so the doctor gave them permission to take him to a special clinic where he fasted, and they did some change of eating, and he literally, and I think it was a combination of diet and God's miracle that he recovered. And his wife loved to cook cakes, and so pretty soon she had it back in his life, and he died within 2 years again of cancer again. And the doctor saw my mother and said this, and I was there and I heard it, and he said this was so not needed. And he said, I told him, whatever worked, don't go back to your the way you ate before. So I feel like that I have to cooperate with God's creation and the way He made things work. So faith is important, huge. Your attitude is huge because you gotta believe what you are saying. You gotta walk it out. And so I believe it, and I'm going to live it. But even if I die, I have freedom in that. And so that takes anxiety out and gets rid of that culprit in your life. And then the eating, I think, is part of God's plan. It doesn't designate whether you're spiritual or not, but if you're going to live on this side of heaven, this is a good way to stay healthy.
You got to. Now, you know, we love that here on Get in the Game because I'm big on health and nutrition. So I love that story. I know that I saw some of that, but for you to give the full perspective is amazing. I do believe that you just helped a lot of people. Now,
Let me just comment.
yes,
on her
absolutely.
husband. I was enthusiastically involved with her.
Great point.
Made choices, you know, food choices and other choices that, you know, really was for my good.
It helps the whole family when you do it.
Awesome.
And, you know, going from the 36-inch waist to 32.
Woo!
Not even thinking about, quote, diet, you know, but eating healthy and exercising and the whole deal. And,
That's amazing. Did it change at all the way you did ministry? Maybe because you had a different outlook? Did it change?
It's funny because I didn't have sugar in the house before this happened, and so it's kind of crazy that this happened to me. But then I realized eating food out, there is so much. When you go out to eat, there's so much. So when you say, did it change? Then I had this guilty conscience that when kids came over here, how could I feed them the junk food, knowing that it's going to kill them? And so our bills went up with what I would purchase for them. If I'm eating organic, I'm going to feed them organic.
Wow.
And so I started feeding others clean. And so it changed in that way, that, I want to be authentic in every way of who I am and do, and so in that sense.
What about you, Pastor Steve? Do you think it changed the way maybe, because when you look at sports, there's so many stories of adversity. And at that point, I mean, anytime you've been married for 50 years, you've gone through adversity, but that just brought in another story of adversity. Did it change the way you ministered to the athletes at all?
Not really. In the personal choices of eating, diet, exercise, all that, I'll say it enhanced what I already knew, and then laid aside the sugar. And the half gallon of ice cream was no more. And so you do crystal shakes now.
Yes, which are just as good if you make them
better.
Yeah, they're much better.
Adjust your taste to
Yes,
the others. Was like,
absolutely.
Ooh, that was nasty.
And do you think also when you, in a spiritual context, when you make a decision to change, God meets you there? Because earlier on in the interview you said
He leads us there.
That's good.
And He's here all the time. And I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil. One of our players stated that as he's walking through the locker room. And I looked at him and he goes, I said, why are you going to fear no evil? The next part of the verse says, for thou art with me.
Wow.
Don't forget it.
Right.
And the whole locker room lit up.
Wow. Wow. Now, I wanted to kind of tell this story because I think it speaks to a lot of what you do. The way you all came into our lives as a family, I'll never forget. My brother called me one day and he says, I just accepted Jesus into my life.
Right there.
Right here. And you led him to the Lord with that. And you all have had the opportunity, oh man, I'm getting emotional. You all have had the opportunity to do that in several lives of student athletes. And you not only changed their lives, but you changed their families. What does that mean to you to know that I'm able to sit here almost 6 years later because you came into our lives as a family by introducing my little brother to the Lord? What does that mean?
We're very thankful. And, just very thankful. And want to continue to be who He wants us to be. And, to be wise, because you can get foolish relatively easy.
Yes.
And,
Yes.
The quicksand is there, so beware, don't go there. And to continue to walk with the Lord, with each other. And if we're looking in the same direction in every area, not only physically, socially, spiritually, when you're looking in the same direction, you end up coming together.
And I would add to this the fact that it affected you. We didn't expect it to affect you that much. We have the same prayer that Lord could send people into our children's lives that will have impact. And so what I see is this is the touch of God, in that He's orchestrating relationships in every which direction to meet. And so it's never just a single encounter that brings someone into that relationship with God. I always laugh when someone comes to me and you think, wow, I get to come to know the Lord. But I know that what preceded that goes way back. Wow. And God, that's the way God keeps us from taking credit for anything, because otherwise we'd gloat or whatever. It is not true. One, I wouldn't want the responsibility because then I would really be stressed out if it was all up to me. But two, I realized that he had been shaping that person through their circumstances, getting them ready for that moment. And they're going to make a lot of mistakes even after that. But we're just part of the journey. We're just one of many that will be in their lives. And so that helps it makes it easier to let go because I know down the road somebody else is going to come in there and be a part of their life and continue that growth part in their life.
And you all also, you do a lot of coaching of couples at every stage of their relationships, whether dating, premarital, marital, and again, as I said earlier in the show, you married, you've had the opportunity to preside over and marry a lot of couples. What is it about coaching couples that brings just another entity of ministry that you all love so much?
I think first is the impact on us.
Yeah.
That,
It helps us to
who's on the throne of your life, and if the Lord is in the driver's seat for both of us, then we're going to end up together. If he's not on the driver's seat, then we're going to be going apart. And so we continually go back to the foundation of our relationship is our relationship with the Lord. And to the pattern, the biblical pattern of he's given us in relationship.
the things that we have discovered that helps us, it's just common that that's the way we help somebody else in that sense. Then there may be a need for a deeper counselor situation, and we highly recommend that. But sometimes, what we need is just somebody next to us that's going through the same kind of thing, and we just share some of God's wisdom, of what's helped us in that sense. And you know what's the hardest about it? Is whatever we plan to speak on, we're going to have a full-out blown issue with that week.
Wow.
So we have to come and be very authentic.
Wow, and
with
vulnerable.
with what we're going to do. So it's not like we got it all together. It's almost, sometimes I dread it because I know, oh no, we're going to speak on this, and I know we're going to be tested and have to practice what we speak of.
Wow, amazing. Now, Pastor Steve, a part of what you've done for over 40 years with University of Miami, Florida Panthers, the Miami Heat, has put you in the position to be around during those championships. And I see you have on some rings there. When you look at those rings, to players they mean something, to coaches they mean something, to the wives of the coaches they mean something, to the water guy, they all mean something to each person that has received one of those rings. When you look at those rings, what do they mean to you?
Well, first, we're thankful that we had the privilege to work with the situations that we worked with, and from starting nobody to the championships, and that's been exciting for us. The Miami Heat ring, one of them is 15 strong, and in faith and family.
Wow.
Are actually on the ring, in the ring space, 15 strong. In other words, together we can accomplish what we could never do by ourselves. And then faith and family, and then it was our time. Actually, inside the ring, it says it was our time.
Wow.
So whoever designed the ring, which I believe in that case was Coach Riley, and is a man. His wife has been in a relationship with Arlene through the years, and we've had times, meaningful times, where he showed up at an event one time, and it was totally spontaneous, and then toward the last part of the program, he said, "Can I say something?"
Wow.
And well, yeah, sure, Coach. What would you like to say? And then he said, "I'm in. I want you to know that. I'm in."
Wow.
So that was a very special word of affirmation. But that's what the rings are symbols, they're reminders, and but we don't do it for the rings.
Right. Absolutely.
But we're thankful that we're included in that, and it gives access, obviously.
And I'm sure when you look down at them, it's a reminder of the lives that you've been able to change, that the Lord has allowed you to change, the coaches, the players, the dancers, the players' families. Because again, just as we shared, when you touch one person, the effects, the ripple effects of that is what it's doing. That's amazing.
Can I share a quick story?
Yeah, absolutely.
One of our coaches was after winning the national championship.
At University of Miami?
University of Miami.
Okay.
Called me and he said, when can we shoot the breeze? And I said, well, tomorrow, Friday, or whatever. He's seen words, and I said, well, what about this afternoon? We meet over at this little cafe. And he goes right to the point. He says, we just won the national championship. We got a great wife and great kids. There's a hole inside of me. I think it has something to do with God. What do you think? And I said, Lord, help me not mess it up.
Wow.
and he opened his life to the Lord, and it's been a catalyst for putting somebody in my role, wherever he has been around, professional and college level sports.
Now, one thing I can imagine, people are watching this and they're moved, maybe to tears, but some of them are like, they may be feeling like they want to get in action. And one thing we were talking about before we started the show, Miss Arlene, is that this isn't a position for the faint at heart, and it's not for the fandom at heart either. And so what would you kind of share with those people who are looking and saying, I want to do exactly what they do?
First of all, we get those requests every now and then because it looks like it'd be a lot. It is a lot of fun, but there's been a lot of work and doors that only God can open that have brought us to this. But I think that the thing
I'll say the story about footprints, where there was 2 sets of footprints, and then also there's 1 set of footprints. And what happened here? That's when the Lord steps in and carries you.
But the thing that I would just think about is that, and I'm losing my track of thought.
People who want to get into it, they're watching this and they're moved by your story and they feel like, where can I sign up?
Right. We raise our support in the sense that we get people to invest in order to be here. So we're not paid by the franchise or by the school or anything else. We strongly believe in being gifted. That's a great filter because it's hard to go in and raise support. But when we believe in what we do, it makes it easier to do so. And we have wonderful people who feel called to be a part of that. And so that, for all these 40, almost 50 years now, as far as doing this kind of work and raising our support, is that. The other thing that is interesting is that they think they can just pop in and get that position by title. And any work that we do with a team, we didn't get there by title or by credentials. You get there by relationships and by the doors that God opens. And you have to have, you can't, as you mentioned, you can't be a fan. We are not fans. In fact, a lot of times we're pretty dumb about some of the stuff and what's going on. But we have become skilled at knowing how to help people with spiritual issues and to want to be faithful with that responsibility. Recently, we just got a call. It's a wonderful story of, we were at the Super Bowl breakfast that we have been involved in for years. And the photographer that was hired to do that came up to one of the gentlemen and said, please tell me how I can get involved. And so they brought him to us and he said he wanted to get involved. And they were the cutest couple and just wonderful, seemingly in their 30s somewhere. And so then they, I said, well, we got tickets to go to a game. You want to join us at the Heat game? And they did. And we got to know each other and thought, wow, they're a great couple. She texted me and said, I wonder if there's a job opening for my husband. And I thought, oh, here we go. But it was so cute. And I said, well, call me. And I said, first of all, you need to know that you need to raise your support, which, is a tough, that usually filters everybody out.
Yes, it does.
And she said, oh, no problem at all. And I thought, whoa. And it ended up he had retired from the military. And so he's postured, and he was a godsend to us.
Wow.
And he's in process of coming on to work alongside of us. But with that, I just say that anything that's worth going after, it has to be a calling, number one. It has to be God providing. And if you're called to do something like this, and this just really makes your heart throb for such an opportunity, then go to God. He will begin to open the door. He will begin to cross people into your path that would begin to take you there.
Before, you all have been married for 50 years. You've been in ministry for 40 plus years. 4 amazing kids.
Actually, we were in ministry before we got married. At least I was.
Oh, that's right. That's right. Because you were working there as a youth director. So
Yeah.
almost 50 years of ministry for you as well. 4 kids, grandkids, many athletes and husbands and wives that you've touched. What's left to do? You guys have lived an amazing life. Retirement?
Yeah. You could say yes,
Mm-hmm.
but we're never going to retire because we're called to, and the greatest joy we have is to do our work, to help other people, to listen to them and help them diagnose why am I feeling that way. There's a hole inside of me. I think it has something to do with God. What do you think?
Wow.
You know? And so, well, you really want to know.
No, I know you'll be doing it forever. But will you write a book?
There's
You
a
have to
lot
write
of
a
books
book.
been written. We were going through a process in here
Mhm.
when we had some work done on home, so we had to move all of our books out.
Mhm.
We got a lot of books, and I've read about half of them.
What about the book you guys write together?
Well, it would be interesting.
We have to take time out for it, I don't know. But you're right, it is a different season in our life, and we are assessing right now in present tense form. We will never retire, because
Right.
that's just not us. And I think whatever platform you're on or whatever season you're in, there's work to be done, and there's relationships to be had, and you can't help. I love this statement that was said to me once: on your way, go out of your way to splash God's love on others. And so it was referring to Jesus when he was on his way to heal a general's daughter one time, that he went out of his way to heal the woman that
Yes.
grabbed hold of his robe. And so he had his intentions of where he needed to be and go. But on his way, he went out of his way. And so a lot of what we've done throughout our life is on our way, go out of our way to do things. And those things are going to keep happening no matter what season or where you are. So
Well,
we're being challenged right now.
Yeah, and the amazing thing is, the Lord says, open your eyes. The ministry's right there in front of you. You know? And
Yeah. So with the changes, there's some changes that are happening, but with the changes have been other things that come right in and to do that. But life, it is challenging, and for those who may be gaining in age, we're facing something. He says he never gets old. But
Well, I agree, because I'll tell you, and I'll share with my viewers, when I walked in, the first thing I said was, it's been 6 years, but you got younger. I mean, you all look amazing. And clearly it's the joy of the Lord, and it's the light of Christ. You've done a lot, you know, in ministry. Are there any special moments that you can share that you look back on, or maybe one particular story that you feel like even 20 years from now when you're still doing ministry, that one thing will stick out, and it's like it's the thing that makes it all worth it?
I don't know how long it's been since Malcolm sat at the table over there, but it's refreshing for me to come back in touch with Malcolm and through you, and to know that, okay, we were just being faithful, you know, following up on someone's, maybe just crack the door of interest a little bit. And in that particular week, there's several people that we still have contact with.
Wow.
Sitting right at that table.
Wow.
Giving their life to the Lord.
Wow.
So.
We'll never get rid of that table, that's for sure.
My
There's
heat player actually was in the business and sold us at a good price.
Wow, there's a lot of anointing over at that table. That table goes down history. What about for you, Miss Arlene?
I think it's when we get down to it, it is the changed lives. He mentioned the hockey, the Panthers calling, and John and Van Beesbrook was the goalie for the Panthers. And when they came here from the New York Rangers, they had no relationship with Christ happening at that time. And so when Steve walked into the Panther locker room, you could tell that story best about what he said to you. Okay. Okay. And when he walked in there, basically, they said, let's take it to the players and see if they want chapel. Because this is unheard of with the hockey.
Wow.
And so he went in.
There was at the time, and they have chaplains now.
Yeah.
Oh, praise God.
So John had a towel around him, and he said, let's take it to the team and let's go ask. And so Steve had to give a chapel on the spot like that. And John said, I think this would do me good. That was going on, and he started meeting with John. And unknown to him, his wife, they had a problem with their child being rejected from a school because he was ADHD. Thank you, ADHD. And so he got rejected, and John's like, who gets rejected from kindergarten? Come on.
Wow.
And so that created a crisis in their life. And the school that did accept their child ended up being a Christian school that began to speak with Rosalind a lot. And one reason that John gave over and over about not wanting a relationship with Christ, he could not believe that God would ask you to love God more than your family. And he, for some reason, he kept bringing that out. And Steve would describe to him, well, he's not asking you that, he's saying that I'll make you a better husband. I'll make you a better father if you love me, number one. And so finally, the day came that John prayed to receive Christ. And he's in bed one night, and his wife says to him, John, there's something I need to tell you. And he said, no, there's something I need to tell you. And she said, but I said it first. And they were having some struggles. And she said, you need to know, and it's just ironic that she put it this way. She said, you need to know you're no longer the most important person in my life. And he said, what? And she said, I have now made Jesus Christ the most important person in my life. And he said, I've just made him the most important person in my life. And so their marriage has just prospered through that. Now he is the head of the hockey, Olympic hockey team for the Olympics. Neat, wonderful guy. So that watching those kind of things happen, and the beautiful drama story that God tells in it, I just thought that is so unique that he struggled at the very point that God would be more important than his family. She would state it in such a way to say, you're no longer the most important person in my life. It was just God's portrait.
Yeah.
So those are those. I think I just go back to those little smatterings of things, and they're a huge encouragement to us.
I'll follow up on that. Years later at the Olympics, my son was in the process of determining whether he and his family were going to live in Asia and do some ministry there. And so that and the U.S. hockey team going to the Olympics, we end up being there with them in the Olympics. Where was I going with that?
I have no idea. So that I will just okay.
It was.
You guys saw them over there?
Well, what we did is we took care of his wife.
Yeah, I didn't you mention that. And now I'm going to use this right now because in our lives as we are gaining in age, we just 2 years ago went through a trauma with Steve. And so he got the flu, and out of the flu, things began to change. And so he has a little bit of a memory lapse that happens now. And so those are the new challenges. But what I love about that, because there's some unknown that we're going to. So I tell you this because we live our lives openly. And I tell you this because a lot of athletes are going through, and it's been diagnosed as a traumatic brain injury. That probably happened from football and the things that he played, though he says he never got a concussion. He only gave them. I feel so sorry for the ones that he gave it to. Yes. Wow. But with that, I love how the scripture memory that he's done in his life prior to this, and the things that are there that he keeps pulling out, and they're so there. And so as we're going into some unknown and some journey into this, we've seen God be, again, to go in there. If I live, we'll praise the Lord. If I die, we'll praise the Lord. Whatever this journey is going to be, we're going to be in it together, and God's got a story that he's relating to others. So there may be others out there that are going through this. I've gotten a few calls from people that are going through this, and it's better to be open about it than to hide it, because when you hide it, it's like the emperor with no clothes. You know, everybody sees something's not exactly there, and it's just better to talk freely of it. And I think we've had freedom in doing that.
Amazing.
But that doesn't mean it's been easy.
Right.
We still, it can be hard, but we find God sustaining us in it. And I am growing a lot. It's exposing fault lines that I haven't dealt with, that I need to deal with.
But just like you've gotten through every other adversity in your marriage and in ministry, you'll get through it.
Yeah.
And then there'll be a story to tell. Yes.
Well, and I remember the story.
Yes. Tell us. We'll end it with this. This is great.
You know, because of our relationship with John and his wife, they gave us access to the families of all of the Olympic team. And so we were on the bus for the Olympic team, and we had brought these very nice brochures that talked about John Mende's book, his life in sports and his life in faith. And we had the local Japanese followers of Christ to hand out the literature.
Wow.
So we're on the bus with the families, and this one father comes on the bus and he says, "Man, the Japanese are handing out flyers about the visa and God."
You're like, yeah, the job's being done, right?
Since we had the privilege of putting that
In
literature
your
in their
hands.
hands,
Yes.
and they were sharing the good news.
Wow.
And,
Amazing.
So that was
Your ministry is international. Wow. And how can those who are watching, if they want to support, how can they support you all?
Well, I would say that Athletes in Action is if you know someone that's working with athletes, you know, that's important. And so you would want to do that. But I basically, you can go to Instagram. And you can give them that address.
Yes.
And of what that
I'll
would
put
be.
that in the interview.
And there would be connections. So if it's to be, there would be connections.
Awesome.
I think that God's got people everywhere, and I'd love to see your different people's lives intersect with other people who are doing work like this.
Yes.
So it's not just us doing this. So there's others out there doing it on all the college campuses with every NBA and NFL. That there are chaplains out there working.
Yes.
And they work in the same way.
Yes.
Have an opportunity to have partners that would partner with them financially in order to reach into the sports life. And the reason that's so important is that if we can get a believer on every team in every country, then from that platform you're going to influence others to respond to it, and it'll trickle into so many different places.
Wow.
Sports is it's an entertainment, but it's a hero kind of a thing, and it's an opportunity that those who can speak out from a personal relationship with God, not just saying, I want to thank the man upstairs, or but I mean they're authentically walking and talking and doing this life.
That's good.
I would suggest you do a follow-up with Darren Smith.
Okay.
And Darren won 2 national championships at DU, won 2 Super Bowls, and is now on our staff team.
Wow.
And his story is
phenomenal.
Yeah, he's had a health issue, gone through a bout with cancer, I won't tell any more of the story. He's been to the top, he's been to the bottom, he's walking with the Lord, he's working with us now locally.
Wow.
So-
Amazing. I would love that. Well, you guys know, as we wrap up the show, I just want to thank you so much. I pray that the book comes. I'm going to be praying that the Lord puts it in your heart to write a book, and then we'll come back and do a book review with you guys. But you guys will always hold a special place in my heart because you're the only chaplain couple I've ever known. And so the work that you've done in our family's life through your relationship with your brother and your relationship with me personally has not gone unnoticed, and I pray blessings upon you guys for that. I just want to thank our sponsors, My Seasoned Chicken and Ribs, Alvin Brooks there in Jacksonville, Florida, for sponsoring the show today, as well as Jessica with Ceramins. Thank you to my producers, Mr. Stefan Patty at 904 Live, Mr. Allen, the best momager on the planet, Melinda Henry, my stylist, Barbara J. You guys know you can follow us on social media at YouTube, Get in the Game with Satara J. Also on Facebook, Satara Bunch with an E. And follow us on Instagram and Twitter at Bunch of Legs. That's LEGZZ. Until next time, we guys will see you soon. Happy Father's Day to all the fathers out there. You guys enjoy your evening. Thank you to the DeBardelaben. We love you guys. Thank you for inviting us once again to our home. And I'm sure we'll be catching up with you guys soon. Love you guys so much.
Love you and thankful for you.
Yes, thank you. You guys have a great evening.